Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
Hello there, everybody. Today we will be talking about a topic that I find pretty interesting. Today we will be looking at some sources that have to do with the Star Wars canon. About 10 years ago, the Star Wars canon, or continuity, was reset. 10 years ago, Lucasfilm decided to not stay consistent with what was called the expanded universe, and even the canon that was set up by George Lucas. Everything that was part of the Star Wars saga was a part of three pillars: George Lucas's Star Wars, which were the films, Lucasfilm Star Wars, and then Star Wars made up of fan films. Within those three pillars, under the level of Lucasfilm Star Wars, how Lucasfilm viewed the continuity was under different canons. The first was G canon, also known as George Lucas canon, and that was George Lucas's story. This was the gospel of Star Wars. This was the high canon. G canon, also known as George Lucas canon, was George Lucas's story that he was telling. The 6 films, the novelizations, and the radio dramas. Next is T canon, also known as television canon, which was the Clone Wars and the unreleased Underworld show. C canon, also known as continuity canon, was the main timeline for the books and comics that worked with and stayed consistent with, as best as they could, G canon and T canon. S canon was the secondary canon. The secondary canon contained older material released the time of the original trilogy, along with video games where they give you decisions to make. Section, which was filled with Star Wars Infinities, The Star Wars, along with other humorous comics. Next we have D canon, which is the Star Wars Detours TV show that has been unreleased. In 2014, Lucasfilm decided to part ways from the previous established continuity and start a new canon. In the article, "The legendary Star Wars Expanded Universe Turns a New Page," we see the celebration of the expanded universe, mentioning how they would do their best to stay consistent with the film and television shows. 2014 Lucasfilm wanted to have all canon at the same level. They wanted a one-universe story, a one-universe canon. We see a lot of canon breaking today, but people don't talk about the canon breaking from the, quote, golden age of Disney Star Wars, which I would say was 2014 to 2017. In this golden age, we see the inconsistency of the character of Luke Skywalker in the 2015 comic labeled Star Wars and the Heir to the Jedi book, along with minor inconsistencies with the novelizations and the movies, along with other novels.
They said that they wanted all of Star Wars moving forward to be all the same level, all in a one-universe canon. Even the famous, or to some people, the infamous writer and director Dave Filoni stated in his foreword for the prequel novel to his show Star Wars Rebels, the novel A New Dawn, that he was excited for the one canon, one universe story. Filoni would work with writers to keep the one universe for not as long as people had hoped. We would later see that these Filoni tie-ins would be ran over by canon-breaking additions. Here are a number of examples. Order 66. In the book Ahsoka, we are shown glimpses at the Battle of Mandalore and what happens to Ahsoka and Rex after Order 66. Eventually, we have the release of the 7th season of the Clone Wars and the Tales of the Jedi TV show. This shows a different story that was presented to us in the book. Kanan the Last Padawan. Canon the Last Padawan tells the story of Caleb Dune, aka Canon from Star Wars Rebels, and how he survived Order 66. This story showed the relationship with the clone troopers and with his master, and it depicts the exact moment when Order 66 happened. In the TV show The Bad Batch, it breaks canon by having the Bad Batch there and having a different series of events. Another big problem that the new canon had was the future of the films. Journey to the sequel trilogy. In the Aftermath trilogy and Battlefront 2, we see the self-destruction of the Empire set up by Palpatine if he would ever die. So his Moffs and Admirals killed off the Empire. So it lasted about a year. They did this so it wouldn't be the same story as the expanded universe. Later, in the 5th Disney Star Wars film, in Fortnite, play a recording of Palpatine returning from the dead.
At last the work of generations is complete. The great error is corrected. The day of victory is at hand. The day of revenge. The day of the Sith.
We see in The Rise of Palpatine that somehow Palpatine is back in the opening crawl. No setup from previous movies, but that is the topic for another video. Now, can a writer change his or her story? Yes, but when it comes to a one-universe canon, it is not up to that one writer's universe. It is not even that one writer's universe. With the old canon level system, there was room to move things around and work things into the universe with retcons. Having the rule of a one universe doesn't work because they didn't give the leaders of the story group the power like it was, for the most part, in the time of George Lucas. In that time, George would give guidelines to the expanded universe so that they would stay consistent with his story. This info has been given to us by the group of storytellers and members of Lucasfilm from that time. George Lucas did not feel like he had to hold his story to the same of that of the expanded universe. But when he gave his ideas, like Darth Maul and Darth Talon being a team in the unreleased Darth Maul Battle of the Sith Lords game, he would let the writers work it in to fit with the expanded universe timeline and not break the canon. I find it very interesting how quickly they changed their tune. Matt Martin, a story group member, was asked about what canon should mean to us. I know this is not saying that there is no canon anymore, but we can start to see the view of what the one universe canon is and isn't. Later, Dave Filoni was promoted to be the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. The final nail in the coffin comes from an interview with Sam Witwer, the voice of Starkiller and Darth Maul in the Clone Wars.
Dave Filoni and I once had this argument that educated me greatly, because I was all concerned. There was this thing I was recording as Darth Maul for this audiobook, and it wasn't, strictly speaking, consistent with something that we did in Clone Wars. Right. And I said, Dave, what should I do? Should I tell them to change the line? Should I blah, blah? What do you think? And how do I solve this problem? And he just said, Sam, it's good if the stories are different. Well, what do you mean? It has to be consistent. He's like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. These are all tall tales. And they all of the tellings it's great if it's a little bit different. That's reason to go seek that out, to get a different perspective on the same story. This campfire that night that was told that story, this happened and Ahsoka's lightsaber was blue. But over here, you heard the same story and Ahsoka's lightsaber was green. And that's good. And when I thought about what he said, I'm like, he's right. And that's always been the way it was with George. There was no real expectation that the books had to line up 100% with what we were doing.
Say that from the information given to us by Sam Witwer, the Star Wars stories as a whole don't fall under the one universe canon storyline anymore, but a story of tales that don't have a lot of business working together all the time. Unlike the expanded universe, for the most part, it looks like they are getting rid of this idea and this statement of the one universe canon rule. They are turning the one universe canon into what they now call the expanded universe, Star Wars Legends. This is a bittersweet truth. The bitter part is that it is sad that the majority of storytellers do not care about this one universe canon, the consistency to Star Wars anymore. Like the majority of the writers of the expanded universe, the writers of the expanded universe would attempt to line everything up with all of the visual media properties. The idea of canon has changed from doing whatever it takes to be one universe, like the expanded universe, to becoming a list of tales that seem to be as myth and legends. The sweet part of this is, along with the release of the TV show Star Wars Visions and the tie-in books and comics, we could see the return of more stories from the expanded universe. They are still updating the MMO video game Star Wars The Old Republic, along with a few short stories. A few years ago, we had the release of Marvel 108, and that was a continuation of the original Star Wars Marvel series. See the release of more stories from the expanded universe, like a Force Unleashed 3, a KOTOR 3, perhaps a Battlefront 3, or even more SWTOR novels. I'm hoping that they will conclude the Legacy era and finally show us the deaths of Han, Luke, and Leia in the expanded universe. What do you guys think about this? If you guys like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to see something new from the expanded universe, please leave that in the comments. Thank you guys for watching.